Hi everyone, welcome to this latest episode of VFX Futures. I'm Ian Fales from beforesandafters.com, and today we've got a very special episode about Free Guy and Digital Domain's visual effects work for that film. I'm joined by DD's visual effects supervisor, Nikos Kalaitzidis. Hey Nikos, how are you?
Hey, Ian. Good to see you finally after all these years of having interviews together. Yes,
I
good.
know.
Yeah.
I know we've done some great things, including when I was at FX Guide on what was it, G.I. Joe and X-Men First Class, and
Day of the Future Past.
yeah, finally because of Zoom we get to see each other and also record something. So that's cool.
See, good things come out of pandemics.
That's right. Nikos and I are actually going to concentrate on one very fun thing that DD did for the film, which was to use the studio's face swapping tech and machine learning tech called Charlatan for a special shot. We'll get to that in a minute. But Nikos, I wanted to get a general overview from you to start with on what DD did do for the Ryan Reynolds film. Can you break it down a little bit?
Well, yeah, we did some key moments in the film. We did the badass opener, which is the opening sequence, which it consisted of about 2 shots, and it was over just under 3,000 frames.
Great ones.
And it really sort of defined the tone of the movie, right? It really shows what the movie was all about and how absurd and the spectacle of it, of the violence that's happening and stealing of the cars and the explosions and helicopters chasing. We just threw the whole kitchen sink at it, and there was never enough action to throw in there. And so we did the badass opener, which was quite a feat. And after that, we did the multiplayer lounge, where all the players come in together and they do exchanges and buy and purchase ammunition and such, exchange of money, exchange of certain illicit things.
Yep.
There's also the construction sites that we built, which was an all CG set. There was, foreground was built on sets, very little of it, most of it was all green screen. And so the whole environment was CG, exterior and interior. And then the gameplay sequences, which defined what the game look was when the users or the programmers are looking at the monitors, that defined what the game is of Free City. So more or less, that's about in a nutshell of what we had to do, with a lot of little tiny small sequences in between, that help the story go along. And it certainly was, all together with all the vendors included, was absolute visual spectacle. Sven Gilberg was our visual effects supervisor on the client side. It was a pleasure to work with him. He's an old alumni, DD alumni from years back. So it was great to actually to work with him in different capacities. And this was one of them. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was great to actually work on a comedy, laugh at the script at the head, when we started the show, laugh at the bid, laugh at the boards, laughed all the way home. So we just couldn't put enough comedy skits, action. It just wasn't enough for Sean. He's always wanted something more, and it was up to us to help contribute with that creativity, which is sometimes, it's something rare, rather than just do exactly this, where Sean was always open to suggestions, and that was it was special.
I almost felt like watching it would be a bit of a visual effects artist's dream, because there'll be scenes where like Ryan Reynolds is just on the street and then there's like this CG robot or creature in the background, or some, hologram thing. It's like there was just something fun in every frame. Is that how it felt when you were doing DD's work?
Yeah, yes, it's exactly that. There's so much happening in all the frames, and there was a lot of different vendors that went into every shot. I remember working on a shot and there was 3 different vendors happening, and so there was a lot of sharing amongst us and trying to figure out how we could do it the least complicated way to do this. And after seeing the film, I got to say, this is one of the first films I've seen in a long time in a movie theater where I actually want to go see it again, even though I worked on it, but to actually see it again, like, wow, because even though we presented our work as a visual effects, our work actually got transferred to a different vendor so they could put the graphics of the holograms and a different sort of comp that was applied to it. And that happened, I felt like, with all the vendors. And so to actually see our visual effects in a different capacity than what we delivered, and how it was used in context of the sequence in the movie, it was quite entertaining. And so it was almost seeing it for the first time.
Well, it's great work. And when I heard about one particular thing that DD did, that's why, Nikos, I wanted to bring you on the VFX Futures podcast, because in some ways it tackles new areas, machine learning, digital humans, face swapping. This is a sequence that involves badass. I've got to be careful not to say the Australian badass, but anyway. But do you want to give a bit of a background to this sequence, and then we'll sort of talk about how DD's Charlatan was actually used?
Yeah, it was a gameplay sequence, and it included badass in that sort of connotation, and it was played by Channing Tatum, and we built badass for a number of shots for visual effects and gameplay. And for visual effects, it was more or less for stunt performance and not necessary for dialogue. And so when we build assets or characters for dialogue, it's a different sort of complexity that we'd have to build to make sure that we have the face shapes and really advance that level of detail that we need to ensure that the dialogue and the face shapes that work and can hold up at high fidelity for a visual effects shot. And for this purpose, we weren't really expecting to do that. And then there was a scene where he had to speak, badass had to speak in one of the shots, and we weren't certainly prepared for that. And so they're like, well, yeah, we'll do our best, of course. And so we've updated our asset to with the rig and the face shapes to do what the dialogue was needed to do. And then it was the ninth inning. It was during delivery. And we know how that could be. And we're delivering this gameplay shot of Channing Tatum, and it's pretty close up in the scene. And what happened was that it just didn't cut it. It didn't look like Channing as soon as we started doing the dialogue. And we've been there before, and so we've thrown every trick in the book to try to do this. And even though it was gameplay, Sean wanted something a bit more realistic, more real to his likeness. And so it was just one of those moments where scratching my head was like, well, what could we do? And we reached out to our R&D department at the time, our digital human group, and they were working on deep fakes. And we approached them and say, hey, is there anything that we could do I know you guys have been demoing this for quite some time and doing a lot of research and putting a lot of labor and experimentation in this sort of new tech. Is there anything that we could do for this one particular shot? And they said, as a matter of fact, we could. And so what we've done was that we retrieved a lot of the shots and the plates that we had of Channing Tatum, and we brought it into digital domain, and we fed the machine for machine learning. And so it took a few days to really grind on the image for training data. And then with enough training data, the system was able to recreate a face frame by frame with stunning accuracy and fidelity. And so we were quite surprised on what we could do, because after what we call the inference of calculations of the machine learning, which took 3, 4, 5 days to actually really calculate. And there's certain resolutions where it calculate like 500 by 500, 1K by 1K, and the more it calculated and grinded, the better the resolution. And after that was calculated, what we did was that we had our animators, who's already did the facial animation of the dialogue, drive that inference, which drove that sort of deep fake, and we composited it onto our CG character, and we presented it to the client, and Sean just bought it immediately. It's like, ah, that's him. There he is. Okay, great. And we were kind of stunned back because we sent so many versions which just didn't pass, and then the first version that we threw in there, it passed muster. So it was great. And that sort of at that point in time, and that was the only time we used it. And my only regret was like, geez, why didn't I ask sooner? Geez, we're going to use it for a bunch of other shots on the film. And now that what that led was it kind of opened up gates for feature films and episodics at Digital Domain. And we literally have it now in all our cycles of films that we're exercising, and we're pushing forward this technology. And it feels like every 3 to 6 months, something new happens, something new is developed, and we really don't know where this is going to go at the end of the day. But one thing I do want to say is that we're treating this as part of our toolkit. You know, we're still going to go ahead and do our high fidelity characters for dialogue, and ensure that we get sort of data on set of the characters that are in question that may need it, and then we would shoot them in a certain appropriate way, so we could give it to the machine for machine learning and use that data. So when we need to, and we're in that situation, we could actually use that in our Charlatan process. You know, but we want to treat it right now as part of our toolkit and not rely on it solely.
Right.
But like I said, I'm not sure where this is going to go in the future.
Yeah. It seems like such a fascinating adaptation of what is DD's Charlatan. And for people who are not sure what that is, there's some great materials that I'll include in the show notes about where it was used on a David Beckham Malaria Must Die campaign, and also a Vince Lombardi Super Bowl spot. Now that's with, you know, like live action actors or live action footage.
That's true.
I think it's a really interesting adaptation here of a digi-double, but a game level digi-double, isn't it? I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's why I feel like the application, we just don't know what the final application is going to be, or if there is one. You know, I feel like we could apply it in so many different ways. In the Beckham campaign, you know, it was agent of Beckham, and it's kind of a face replacement, but his own self aged, and it worked out quite remarkably with the correct data set that was recorded at the head of the shoot, and that helped tremendously. So, you know, preparation goes a long way. Where what we did here on Free Guy was just one of those things that we were lucky to have that footage. We had the footage of Channing Tatum, and we were able to apply that. You know, when we do that in the future, as we're doing it now, you know, we just want to ensure with the clients that, you know, that, hey, let's do this. Let's do this together. Let's get this data. As we would go into ICT and get a scan of the actor, let's sit them down for a half hour and just get like a really proper shoot of them, and we could guarantee you something that's always going to look photoreal. You know, and avoid the uncanny valley. You know, nobody wants to go there. Nobody. So this is a great tool to try to certainly ensure that we will get a photoreal looking human.
Yeah, and you mentioned stuff about the training data. That's also interesting, because was it training data from your digital double Tatum, or was it training data from actual imagery of Tatum, you know, photos or footage?
Yeah, so it was footage of Tatum on set, almost in the same environment, but he had a different dialogue and different dialogue altogether. And so they wanted to change the dialogue. Of course, they couldn't do reshoots. Let's do gameplay. So, you know, so they did the ADR later. This is the lines that we want us to use. So we animated that, facial animation, keyframed it. The facial animation for what he was saying was great. It's just that he was just not looking like Shannon. He looks like somebody, but it just wasn't Shannon. So, you know, this is where we use the Charlatan technique, you know, something very similar to deepfakes, and took the animation and we drove the Charlatan photographic elements to get what we needed. And so we literally have animation drive-in photographic elements, which is more or less in the nutshell of what's happening with a lot of stuff that's happening under the hood. But that's another thing. It's what's happening under the hood, because you are doing machine learning, you are feeding it. So there's a little bit of a black box there of what is being learned. And so what we've learned is the more we feed it, the better the fidelity, the more that we could do with this tech, the more how we want to use it in the end. And so I feel like there's not enough data that we could actually feed it to get what we want. So, like I said, we're moving forward with it, and we're trying to get the data, record the actors, the performers as much as we can with certain visemes that we use on set, which are saying the least amount of words and getting the maximum amount of facial expressions. And we record that in a certain way, and then we take that data and we feed it into the machine.
One of the most interesting things to me as well is that I always feel like visual effects studios are asked, or VFX soups are asked very recently, constantly, when are you using deepfakes? Come on, get on the bandwagon. They work, they look great, because there's all these YouTube, Twitter posts. Sure. And here's Digital Domain actually doing it. I think that's really cool, Nikos.
I wasn't part of the Digital Human group, but I know those guys there. They're like mad scientists trying a lot of different experimentations with this at the beginning. I do remember there was a point of time where even dare I say, the CIA even came to actually see what the hell we were doing there. And I was like, hey, who are those guys? They really wanted to see a demo of what could be done. And it's quite interesting. This is the kind of tech where we're not sure where it could lead to, but it's developing very quickly.
Yeah. And of course, Digital Domain is one of those studios that's so wrapped up in digital humans over the years. You've worked yourself on Benjamin Button and Tron Legacy, but so many people might not realize that so many other films you've worked on have digi-doubles or partial digi-doubles that are sometimes for stunts, sometimes for close-up work. What's your take on this evolution since you started in the industry, where you've got digi-doubles, but now you've also got deep fakes and machine learning to aid that process?
Oh my God, I can't even tell you how exciting this was. I mean, it's just so one of those things. Like, I've been doing this for a long time, and sometimes, there's a certain grind that we do during deliveries and such, but every so often comes new tech that's like, holy smokes, that's really cool. It gets me up in the morning. There's a lot of questions and interviews like, what makes you lose sleep at night over the show? This is actually makes me wake up and say, I can't wait to actually see the shot, and there's other shows that are using it right now. And it's quite exciting to see like how far we're pushing this, and just to see simple tests. I mean, I could predict maybe in 2 years' time, we'll be able to give tools to our animators. So when they're doing facial animation, they're literally seeing it at real time photographically, and it's not a render of a CG render through V-Ray or RenderMan. It's literally, it's happening using this tool. And it's going to be real time if and when we get the data up front that we could actually use for machine learning, do the inference, calculate that, and then give it back to our animators. And when they're animating something, boom, there it is. There's Ian saying something absolutely outrageous, and it's going to happen, So that was really exciting to actually see. And again, I don't want to put all our eggs in that basket. I want to use it as part of our tool belt, but it's really exciting to see where all of this is going. And to see around the industry, it's not just Charlatan. I'm seeing different studios, visual effects studios that are our competitors. They're doing different things too, and everyone has their special sauce. And it's really fascinating and exciting to actually see all this new tech that's happening right now. It just felt like we all came up together, and there are certain VFX vendors that were really strong at certain things and really strong at other things, and until to a point where we more or less came up. Because now you look at the bake-offs that pre-pandemic, and you could actually see such wonderful work, and the work is so outstanding, and the volume of work is incredible. We've all reached a certain point. And so now, right now, there's all these new tools are being created to make that work even easier and more realistic. And it seems like we all have our special sauce of doing it, and it's really exciting. I think it's great. I'm glad to actually start to see, these graphic cards that are coming out, that we're more and more artists that are using it, and we could actually achieve a lot more things a lot faster, and I think that's great. And it's great for the filmmakers, and because they're wanting to see things a lot faster. They want to see things. Now we're working on LEDs, LED walls, and creating content for LED walls, before visual effects. Well, it is visual effects, but it's pre VFX, I suppose. We got to come up with a term for this, where we have to create all this content, shoot it on set. You're on set; it's not green screen anymore, and all of a sudden, and if it's done correctly, the client or the filmmakers actually have something for the temp to put in the edit to actually show people, and it really helps, and it works, and it gets our visual effects as opposed to the next level quite quickly, because we've done all that content already. So there's a lot of new tools out there that's being built, and we're doing visual effects a lot faster, more efficiently, with the help of technology, and it's setting new grounds and defining how we do visual effects differently now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's something to be very excited about. I'm so glad you also mentioned the real-time side of things, and I can't wait to see where Charlatan and real-time line up. That's actually really exciting to me as well, Nikos.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So it's interesting because, like I said, I was a little bit nervous talking to you about this one shot, but in some ways, actually, I see where this is going, and I see like what are all the movies that we're working on, and it's in our cycle of films right now that each one of these films has a little bit of that, and we're preparing for that, and so it's really interesting to see where it's going.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Well, great to talk to you. Great to see your face, and
awesome.
Thank you for going into that detail. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, Ian. Anytime.
Thanks, Nikos. See you later.
Bye-bye.